Hello, welcome to Heady Remarks. It's December 23rd, 2022, and I'm going to talk about the Crusades. I've been trying to learn about them, and I didn't finish this book quite yet. What's it called? The Crusades, The Authoritative History of the War for the Holy Land by Thomas Asbridge. I had 3 hours left, but I ran out of time. So there was other stuff that I listened to. I listened to the great lectures, the great courses about it. Dan Brown wrote a book about it. I was enjoying this one more than his, though, unfortunately, but I listened to that one first. He's not. I know he's supposed to be this great history guy, but I've listened to his podcast. I don't really like his podcast. I don't like how he tells this. I don't like him very much. Crusaders by Dan Jones, and then the era of the Crusades, great courses. And I watched this movie called Kingdom of Heaven that Ridley Scott made, and here's Archie. I tried to put really soft stuff down so that he'd stick around because he's cute. Yeah, so the Crusades is one of those topics that are frequently brought up when people are trying to shit on Christians. And I don't want to do that. And yeah. But, at first it seemed like overall it's basically, I was thinking it seems kind of like a story where, they kind of failed what they were, it didn't last very long. They created what they called the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And, it didn't last. And they did get their asses kicked a lot by Muslims, but they kicked their asses too a lot. So there's that. And I was also just sort of curious about what it takes to get Christians to fight. I just find that interesting. So, because they sort of beat them over the head with it, oh, it's not very Christian of you to go and kill people. But, I'll try to get into why they considered it justified. So I don't know how I should do it. Just a quick overview of the whole thing real quick, and then we can sort of just go back and browse various people and places. There was this documentary on Amazon Prime that was kind of low budget, but I actually found it easier to I don't know. I liked it better than some of these other audios I was listening to. And I also watched a 3-part BBC documentary. I kept falling asleep, so I kept having to start over. Anyway, I was trying to see who made it so I could cite them. All it said was only Fundamental Studio. It didn't have any people's names or anything. So anyway, the Holy Land. So the Holy Land, Jerusalem, it's holy to the 3 Abrahamic religions for different reasons. Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Jews find it holy because it's the land that, they believe God gave to Abraham. Christians, I believe that's where Jesus, he was killed and rose from the dead. And is that where he went to heaven also? Ascended to heaven? And then the Muslims also think that that's where, what's their guy's name? Muhammad ascended to heaven as well. So they all sort of played capture the flag with Jerusalem. Well, actually, Jews aren't really in this story all that much. So this is mostly just Christians fighting Muslims. But, anyway. So in 400 AD, Muslims conquered the city of Jerusalem. So this is way before the Crusades. And then in 1095, okay, so Christians were allowed, 400 AD, Muslims conquered the city of Jerusalem. Christians were allowed in, but they paid a tax called jizya, Jiziyya, or a poll tax. They were tolerant of Christians and Jews. I wrote Hughes. That's a typo. But unequal. Oh, so they were tolerant to them, but they were unequal. And then in 1095, Jerusalem was taken over. So yeah, hundreds of years later, Jerusalem was taken over by some new Muslims, the Seljuk Turks. Seljuk. I've also seen it spelled with a Q, Seljuq. And these Turks were jerks. And they were kind of tormenting the Byzantine Empire too. So a lot of the stuff, when you first try to figure out what triggered the Crusades, it seems like they're kind of trying to vilify Christians or like hide stuff. Like, I don't know. It's like they weren't really telling you what was going on. They want you to think that the Christians just out of nowhere decided to go on crusades, but it's kind of hard to believe that. So the truth is, I mean, yeah, a lot of them say that there was nothing going on. I guess it's hard to know for sure, but this one was like they massacred Christians, barred them from entering the city for pilgrimage because, they like to travel there and visit their little holy sites and stuff. So they stopped letting them do that after hundreds of years. And many churches were destroyed or turned into stables. The Turks continued their conquest towards Constantinople. So the Greek emperor asked the Pope for help, and primarily to help the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I Komnenos. I'm probably going to say so many things wrong. To save his empire from the Seljuk Turks, but also to recapture the Holy Land and Jerusalem. So I feel like we should look at a map. Do we have a map? Let me see here. Share screen. Okay, see that? So 1096 to 1204. The purple is the Christian lands. The orangish yellow is the Muslim lands. And then the red are the kingdoms that were established by crusaders. And then they've got like these lines showing the various crusades. I didn't realize there were so many. The Great Courses guy was going into like 6, 7, 8 crusades. This only mentions 4, but so the first crusade is the purple. So like you see the Byzantine Empire here, they were getting invaded by the Seljuks and losing land. Ultimately, as we know, the Byzantine Empire did eventually fall, but they were hoping to get some help. And they were like, while you're at it, maybe you can take back these Holy Lands. So yeah, the purple is the first crusade from 1096 to 1099, coming from various places. The Muslims, when they talked about the Crusaders, would refer to them as Franks, because a lot of them were from France, but they weren't all French. A lot of Germans. There were even Welsh, my people, English, Italian. Okay, so Second Crusade is this green one, 1147 to 1149. The Third Crusade, they went a different route, it looks like. Well, there's a couple. It's the red one, 1189 to 1191. And the Fourth Crusade is in orange, 1202 to 1204. So that was only 2 years. So these were going on for hundreds of years, 200 years, basically. Well, 1096. No, not quite 200 years, I guess. I find it helpful to look at maps. So, yeah, Egypt down here, Jerusalem, Acre, Tripoli, Antioch, Edessa. These were like counties. They called it the County of Edessa. Do I have any other ones? Any other pictures? Oh, this is just a modern map. I just thought it was interesting to look at. Just sort of. So basically, yeah, Turkey's in that spot now. Yeah. I don't know. What else we got? What's this? Yeah, County of Edessa, Principality of Antioch, County of Tripoli, Kingdom of Jerusalem. Down there. Yeah, there it is, Seljuk with a Q. Okay, anyway, should I leave that up? I don't know. Got any other pictures while we're at it? Any other maps? Oh, I just like this guy because he's cute. I love Pepe, he's cute. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, so, yeah. Okay. So yeah, they're like, help us. We're losing our empire. They keep encroaching on our territory and we're fighting like all over the place and we need help. And there's a schism between the East and West of the church, you know, the Holy Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire, but they were like, let's bury the hatchet and help out. So, okay, August 15th, 1096, the Crusades officially began, but French and German peasants had started their own 4 months before that. That's called the People's Crusade. So that's like considered sort of a it's not considered official, but there's a bunch of, you know, untrained peasants, basically, not only peasants, but it wasn't like sanctioned by the Pope. They just sort of got inspired after Pope Urban II gave his little speech. And there's multiple versions of that speech. Where is it? Where is it? Too many tabs open as usual. I thought. Where is it? Sorry. I wanted to maybe read some of the different. It's hard to know exactly what was said because there's different versions of the speech. Okay, what the heck? I guess I'm gonna have to. Pope Urban II Crusade speech. Okay, so in 1094, 1095, Alexios I Komnenos, the Byzantine emperor, sent to the Pope Urban II and asked for aid from the west against the Seljuk Turks, who had taken nearly all of Asia Minor from him. At the Council of Clermont, Urban addressed a great crowd and urged all to go to the aid of the Greeks and to recover Palestine from the rule of the Muslims. The acts of the council have not been preserved, but we have 5 accounts of the speech of Urban, which were written by men who were present and heard him. Fulcher of Chartres, I'm sorry, I can't do French, Robert the Monk, Gesta Francorum, Balderic of Dole, Guibert de Nogent, and Urban II letter of instruction. I don't know which one I should read. Supposedly it was very inspiring, and he actually was like, tried to sort of walk it back. You can see in his letters, he was like, okay, but hold on, like, because everyone was like, let's go. And he was like, don't go if your, you know, wife like needs you at home or whatever. A lot of wives went with people, with their husbands, though. Like the People's Crusade, they brought their kids. And yeah, but he was sort of like, don't go if you're not like sanctioned, if you didn't get permission from your bishop, you know, sort of trying to tamper a little bit. But I don't know, people got really excited and were inspired to go. I'll just read this first version. I don't know if this is correct. Like I said, there's 5 different versions of his speech and they only have a few things in common, but this is just one. Apparently he was very charismatic and a great speaker, so it like worked a little too well. Most beloved brethren, urged by necessity, I, Urban, by the permission of God, chief bishop and prelate over the whole world, have come into these parts as an ambassador with a divine admonition to you, the servants of God. I hope to find you as faithful and as zealous in the service of God as I had supposed you to be. But if there is in you any deformity or crookedness contrary to God's law, with divine help, I will do my best to remove it. For God has put you as stewards over his family to minister to it. Happy indeed will you be if he finds you faithful in your stewardship. You are called shepherds. See that you do not act as hirelings, but be true shepherds with your crooks always in your hands. Do not go to sleep, but guard on all sides the flock committed to you. For if through your carelessness or negligence a wolf carries away one of your sheep, you will surely lose the reward laid up for you with God. Yeah, so a lot of people, they sincerely believed that they could wash away their sins if they participated in this. So people who felt like they had sinned or something, or done bad stuff, they were like, this is how I can get back into God's good grace, I guess, and go to heaven when I die. Continuing. And after you have been bitterly scourged with remorse for your faults, you will be fiercely overwhelmed in hell, the abode of death. Oh yeah, that's another thing, is at the time there was a lot of just a lot of art showing the torturous nature of hell, people were scared of going there. Continuing. For according to the gospel, you are the salt of the earth, Matthew 5:13. But if you fall short in your duty, how, it may be asked, can it be salted? Oh, how great the need of salting. It is indeed necessary for you to correct with the salt of wisdom this foolish people which is so devoted to the pleasures of this world, lest the Lord, when he may wish to speak to them, find them putrefied by their sins, unsalted and stinking. For if he shall find worms, that is, sins, in them, because you have been negligent in your duty, he will command them as worthless to be thrown into the abyss of unclean things. And because you cannot restore to him his great loss, he will surely condemn you and drive you from his loving presence. But the man who applies this salt should be prudent, provident, modest, learned, peaceable, watchful, pious, just, equitable, and pure. For how can the ignorant teach others? How can the licentious make others modest? And how can the impure make others pure? If anyone hates peace, how can he make others peaceable? Or if anyone has soiled his hands with baseness, how can he cleanse the impurities of another? We read also that if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into the ditch. Matthew 15:14. But first correct yourselves, in order that, free from blame, you may be able to correct those who are subject to you. If you wish to be the friends of God, gladly do the things which you know will please him. You must especially let all matters that pertain to the church be controlled by the law of the church, and be careful that simony does not take root among you. I don't know what that word means. Lest both those who buy and those who sell church offices be beaten with the scourges of the Lord through narrow streets and driven into the place of destruction and confusion. Keep the church and the clergy and all its grades entirely free from the secular power. See that the tithes that belong to God are faithfully paid from all the produce of the land. Let them not be sold or withheld. If anyone seizes a bishop, let him be treated as an outlaw. If anyone seizes or robs monks or clergymen or nuns or their servants or pilgrims or merchants, let him be anathema, cursed. Let robbers and incendiaries and all their accomplices be expelled from the church and anathematized. If a man who does not give a part of his goods and as alms is punished with the damnation of hell, how should he be punished who robs another of his goods? For thus, this is boring. You have seen for a long time the great disorder of the world caused by these crimes. It is so bad in some of your provinces, I am told, and you are so weak in the administration of justice. I don't know if maybe this isn't very inspiring. Although, O sons of God, you have promised more firmly than ever to keep the peace among yourselves and to preserve the rights of the church, there remains still an important work for you to do. Freshly quickened by the divine correction, you must apply the strength of your righteousness to another matter which concerns you as well as God. For your brethren who live in the East are in urgent need of your help, and you must hasten to give them the aid which has often been promised them, for as the most of you have heard, the Turks and Arabs have attacked them and have conquered the territory of Romania, the Greek Empire, as far west as the shore of the Mediterranean and the Hellespont, which is called the Arm of St. George. They have occupied more and more of the lands of these Christians and have overcome them in 7 battles. They have killed and captured many and have destroyed the churches and devastated the empire. If you permit them to continue thus for a while with impunity, it says impurity, but I feel like impunity makes more sense. The faithful of God will be much more widely attacked by them. On this account, I, or rather the Lord, beseech you as Christ's heralds to publish this everywhere and to persuade all people of whatever rank, foot soldiers and knights, poor and rich, to carry aid promptly to those Christians and to destroy that vile race from the lands of our friends. I say this to those who are present. It meant also for those who are absent. Moreover, Christ commands it. All who die by the way, whether by land or by sea, or in battle against the pagans, shall have immediate remission of sins. So they call them pagans. I noticed the Muslims referred to the Christians as polytheists a lot, which is, I don't know. Maybe the Trinity, Anyway, shall have immediate remission of sins. Okay, yeah. So that's like one of the main things is they were promised the remission of sins if they participated. This I grant them through the power of God, which I am invested. Oh, what a disgrace if such a despised and base race which worships demons should conquer a people which has the faith of omnipotent God and is made glorious with the names of Christ. With that reproaches will the Lord overwhelm us if you do not aid those who, with us, profess the Christian religion. Let those who have been accustomed unjustly to wage private warfare against the faithful now go against the infidels. Oh, you call them infidels too. They called us that too. I say us, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. And end with victory this war which should have been begun long ago. Let those who for a long time have been robbers now become knights. Let those who have been fighting against their brothers and relatives now fight in a proper way against the barbarians. Let those who, they called us barbarians too. I'm just going to say us. I don't, apparently I identify with the Christians. I'm not Christian, but whatever. Europeans. Let those who have been serving as mercenaries for small pay now obtain the eternal reward. Let those who have been wearing themselves out in both body and soul now work for a double honor. Behold, on this side will be the sorrowful and poor, and on that the rich. On this side the enemies of the Lord. On that his friends. Let those who go not, put off the journey, but rent their lands and collect money for their expenses. And as soon as winter is over and spring comes, let them eagerly set out on the way with God as their guide. Okay, so they funded their own trips. They sold all their stuff, and I think it created, what's it called, deflation? I don't know, something weird with the economy happened in France because so many people sold so much of their stuff. Yeah, Robert the Monk. So here's like the 5 other versions of the speech. I wish we had the actual one, but I'm just going to read some excerpts from the different versions. Oh, race of Franks, race from across the mountains, race chosen and beloved by goddess, God, there's typos, shines forth in very many of your works set apart from all nations. From the confines of Jerusalem and the city of Constantinople, let the deeds of your ancestors move you and incite your minds to manly achievements. The glory and greatness of King Charles the Great and of his son Louis, and of your other kings who have destroyed the kingdoms of the pagans and have extended in these lands the territory of the Holy Church. Let the holy sepulchre of the Lord our Savior, which is possessed by unclean nations, especially incite you, and the holy places which are now treated with ignominy and irreverently polluted with their filthiness. O most valiant soldiers and descendants of invincible ancestors, be not degenerate, but recall the valor of your progenitors. Yeah, there were like letters being mailed about that were describing the atrocities of the Muslims. I don't know if they were actually true or not, but trying to rile people up. And one of the things they said was going on was like forced circumcisions, and that they were like spraying the blood on their altars from the forced circumcisions. I don't know, but might not actually have been happening. Some of the stuff you listen to in the mainstream, whatever, says like there was no event that like really triggered this. They sort of try to make it sound like it came out of nowhere, but I think they were losing territory. They were no longer being permitted to go on their pilgrimages. And I think there was probably some truth to the unfairness being shown, because otherwise after hundreds of years, why would they suddenly, and like I said, the Byzantine Empire needed help, but Everyone that hath forsaken houses or brethren or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold and shall inherit everlasting life. Let none of your possessions detain you. No solicitude for your family affairs, since this land which you inhabit, shut in on all sides by the seas and surrounded by the mountain peaks, is too narrow for your large population, nor does it abound in wealth, and it furnishes scarcely food enough for its cultivators. Hence it is that you murder one another, that you wage war, and that frequently you perish by mutual wounds. Let therefore hatred depart from among you. Let your quarrels end. Let wars cease, and let all dissensions and controversies slumber. Enter upon the road to the Holy Sepulchre. I had a thing open for that. Where is it? Is that it? Nope. Maybe I shouldn't pre-open these. Where should I put it? I had a page open showing the Holy Sepulchre. There it is. Okay. Maybe I'll share that. This is supposed to be where the tomb was that Jesus Christ was placed in, and the site of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem is identified as the place both of the crucifixion and the tomb of Jesus of Nazareth. The church has long been a major pilgrimage center for Christians all around the world. According to the New Testament, Jesus was crucified at Golgotha, the place of the skull. This has been identified as an area of abandoned stone quarries just outside the city wall of the time. About 10 years after the crucifixion, a third wall was built that enclosed the area of the execution and burial within the city, and this accounts for the Holy Sepulchre's location inside the old city of Jerusalem today. The Roman Emperor Constantine I, a convert to Christianity, had the Temple of Venus in Jerusalem demolished to make way for a church. In the course of the demolition, a tomb was discovered that was thought to be the tomb of Jesus. The first church of the Holy Sepulchre was approached by a flight of steps from the Cardo, the main street of Jerusalem. How do I make this larger? I want to be able to see it. So that, you see it? It's not supposed to be it. The first church okay. The pilgrims went through a narthex, a basilica, and an open area, the Holy Garden, which had in it the rock of Golgotha, finally reaching the Holy Sepulchre itself. The rock-cut tomb was initially open to the elements, but later it was protected by a small building. The whole complex was richly decorated, as we know from the description of Constantine's biographer Eusebius of Caesarea, from pictures in the Church of Prudenziana in Rome dating from early in the 5th century, and on the Madaba mosaic map from the 6th, and from modern excavations. In 326, Constantine's mother, St. Helena, made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem where, according to legend, she discovered the relic of the cross of Jesus, the true cross. The story of the discovery of the cross was current early in the 5th century, and in the 11th century, a cave deep below the ruins of the basilica came to be known as the Chapel of the Invention of the Cross. In 614, a Persian army destroyed the church and the true cross was taken away, but in 631, the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius negotiated its return. The Arab conquest in 638 was initially less disruptive, as Christians were treated with tolerance, but 300 years later, the entrance to the basilica was converted into a mosque, and in 966, the dome was destroyed by fire during anti-Christian riots. These dates are a little different than... In 1009, the fanatical Fatimid Caliph Al-Hakim ordered the destruction of the church. The Byzantine Emperor Constantine IX, Monomachus, sorry, I don't know how these are pronounced, 1042 to 1055, funded its rebuilding, but on a different plan with the entrance on the south side. This was the church that drew pilgrims from all over Christendom in the later 11th century. Oh, is that what it looks like now? That's prettier. And for much of that period, the Muslim rulers of the city treated them well. It was only after the capture of the city by the Seljuk Turks Those jerks. Not just kidding. In 1077, that rumors began to circulate that Christian pilgrims were being ill-treated and denied access to the church. The liberation of the holy places, the foremost of which was the Holy Sepulchre, was an important motivation for the First Crusade between 1096 and 1099. After the capture of the city by the Crusaders in 1099, eyewitnesses tell how the survivors of the expedition prayed in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which struck them as unusual because it was open to the sky. During the next half-century, the Church of Constantine IX Monomachus was largely reconstructed. Although the building's footprint was preserved, the church acquired the attributes of a cathedral on the Western model. The Holy Garden became the Basilica of the Crusaders' Church, and the Rock of Golgotha was given its own chapel. My stomach's growling. Probably should have eaten. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was reconsecrated on July 15th, 1149, 50 years to the day after the capture of Jerusalem by the First Crusade. But in fact, work continued on the building for some years afterwards. What's that? It's pretty. Nevertheless, the Church of the Crusaders is essentially the church that is to be seen today. The Crusaders' church attracted enormous number of pilgrims whose entry and circulation had to be controlled. The twin doorways can still be seen, although the elaborately carved lintels under which the pilgrims passed were removed after the earthquake of 1927 and are now in the Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem. The right-hand door was blocked up after the Muslim reconquest of the city in 1187. However, even during periods of Muslim occupation, pilgrims continued to be admitted to the site. Okay, I guess I don't have to read this entire thing. It was the spiritual focus of Christendom and its most important pilgrimage center. The church was laid out to enable pilgrims to move from chapel to chapel, their visit culminating in the Holy Sepulchre itself. At Golgotha, to mark the completion of their pilgrimage, they would leave the crosses they had carried on the journey. And a great pile of these would be burnt on Easter Eve. Interesting. On Holy Saturday, the ceremony of the Holy Fire took place. The patriarch entered the edicule, where the Easter fire was kindled and then passed from hand to hand. This was witnessed by the chroniclers Echehard of Ara in 1101 and Cafaro in 1102. Sorry, I feel like I'm saying everything wrong. Despite the mutilations of the centuries, the Holy Sepulchre remains a fascinating complex of structures and is of key importance for several phases of medieval architectural history, imitations being built all over Europe. Today, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is one of Jerusalem's main landmarks and continues to draw many pilgrims and visitors. I almost feel like we should have not even bothered with Jerusalem. I don't know. Maybe that's dumb of me, but why not just protect the Byzantine Empire like what they were needing? You know, why go down here at all? I mean, I could understand maybe this area, Edessa and Antioch, maybe, but why? I don't know. You're just going to be surrounded by Muslim warriors. So, okay. I don't know. It's not home. It's just weird to me. You know, I look up landscape of that area and I'm just like, it's not. I would have felt homesick trying to live there if I was, you know, from Europe, I imagine. I don't know. But I get it. It's like their whole religion. It's important to them. Okay, so anyway, I guess I'll go back to my notes now. Okay, so yeah, the People's Crusade. It was led by a guy named Peter the Hermit, and they, on their way to Jerusalem, I don't think they actually made it to Jerusalem. Well, I'll get into it. Yeah, French and German peasants started their own crusade 4 months before the official one started. The People's Crusade, prelude to the actual Crusades. So they started in April of 1096. It was not Catholic Church approved. It was not official. In 1095, there had been a meteor shower, an aurora, a lunar eclipse, and a comet, all of which made people think the world was about to end. Apocalyptic dread was a phrase that I saw. They had apocalyptic dread. Okay, so led by Peter the Hermit of Amiens, 100,000 mostly unskilled fighters, and some minor knights like Walter Sans-Avor. They did actually reach Nicaea. Okay, so as they made their way to the Byzantine Empire area. And they killed a lot of Jews. Not great. They, I think there was some quote that was like, hey, if we're going off to kill, Muslims or, are comments removed? Hello, Tribal Defender. I don't think so. What do you mean? You're the first one so far, but I saw that. But I have heard people say that they try to type stuff and it's like not letting them say stuff. So I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of censorship going on. But what do you mean on the article? Sorry, I think you are talking about on YouTube, but anyway, yeah, they went through like cities in the Rhineland and they killed Jews. They're like, hey, we've got people in our midst already who are, whatever they called them. And they did bad things. They murdered people. There were like, I don't know if it's called, there were certain people that tried to protect them. They would like pay them, the Jewish people paid them to protect them, and they either betrayed them or they just straight up failed. And the People's Crusade people got them anyway. And there were a lot of Jews who like committed suicide and killed their own kids before they could get them to kill them and stuff. I think I saw one that said that they were shaving their heads. I'm not sure about that. That's just in my head. I don't know why they would do that though. Like their own heads, shaving their own heads. I don't know why. I might be wrong about that. Yeah, massacres. And yeah. Anyway, so they did reach Nicaea. I'm probably saying that wrong. Turks were waiting for them in the wooded valley area near the village of Dracone, 3 miles from the Crusaders' camp. So the Turks shot like a shitload of arrows at these People's Crusade folk, and many died. Only 3,000 were able to take refuge in an abandoned castle, and they were saved by some Byzantines who sailed over and attacked the Turks, those few people that were left. So that's basically it for the People's Crusade. All right, and then the First Crusade, it showed a wiki link, and the comment was removed. Huh. Check Abbasid and Carolingian alliance. Oh, okay. While you're here, Tribal Defender, there was, well, it's later on, but they did go after, like, I guess they call everyone pagans, but they went after pagans at one point in the Baltic area. Not cool. The Abbasid Carolingian alliance. Combined military operations. Oh, Charlemagne and Harun al-Rashid. These contacts followed the intense conflict between the Carolingians and the... When was this? 732. The Battle of Tours. Aimed at establishing a counter-alliance with the faraway Abbasid Empire based in the Near East slightly later. Okay. I might look into this a little more in a minute, but I just have it open. So, back to the First Crusade. 4 Crusader armies leave Europe August 16th, 1096. Is this the one they called the Prince's Crusade? I think so. Yeah, so they leave Europe August 16th, 1096. I noticed that British people pronounce Christian like Christian. I know you wouldn't delete. Yeah, no, I didn't even see him. I showed a wiki link and the comment was removed. Huh. That's weird. Why would they do that? It's odd. Anyway, so that's the end of the People's Crusade. Moving on again. Alexius struggles to trust the Crusaders after what he witnessed with the People's Crusade, what they did. So he was like a little like, eh. yeah, it's called the Prince's Crusade, and this is like the first one, the official first one. They were carrying less supplies, like less water, less everything, because they expected Alexius to help them and supply them with stuff. But unfortunately, he was like untrusting. Alexius didn't want to lead the Crusades. He wanted them to swear fealty to him and go get the Turks in Asia Minor. Crusaders began with Nicaea, which was under Sultan Kalik Arslan I, and they had success. They got Nicaea. Nicaea, I don't know how to pronounce it. Then came the Battle of Dorylaeum. Arslan was prepared with bigger troops. The Muslim guy, Arslan. But the Crusaders still had victory thanks to the French army showing up in time to help. And then there was the Battle of Antioch, which was also another success. So this, first crusade was like, they were very inspired, raring to go, and they were like having success. So yeah, on to Antioch. Success after the arrival of the Saxon army on March 4th, 1098. It had started October 1097 and ended June 28th, 1098. So that one took a while. And they thought they might lose that one at one point because they were like trapped in the city and running out of food and starving and eating leather and stuff, and like eating shoes. They were surrounded. I guess the Saxon army showed up and saved them. But there's this story of them supposedly finding something called the Holy Lance, which is supposed to be what pierced Jesus's side when he was killed. Like, they started digging. Some guy thought that like an angel gave him a vision, and I'll have the names somewhere else later. But yeah, I don't know. The story is that they found this Holy Lance and it inspired them to go like roar and go and get the Muslims and win. Although that might not be entirely true because they didn't immediately charge out right after finding the lance. It was like 2 weeks later. But I don't know. That's just a story that's involved with it. They could have found just a piece of the Holy Lance. It might have just been a piece of wood. There might have been metal involved too. I don't know. I'll find out more in a minute. Maybe I should look it up right now. The Holy Lance. Let's find it. The Holy Lance. Antioch. Also known as the Lance of Longinus. The Spear of Destiny, or the Holy Spear, is the lance that pierced the side of Jesus as he hung on the cross during his crucifixion. The lance is mentioned in the Gospel of John. Where does it talk? Antioch. During the June 1098 siege of Antioch, a monk named Peter Bartholomew reported that he had a vision in which St. Andrew told him that the Holy Lance was buried in the Church of St. Peter in Antioch. After much digging in the cathedral, Bartholomew allegedly discovered a lance. Despite the doubts of many, including the papal legate Adhemar of Lipui, the discovery of the Holy Lance of Antioch inspired the starving crusaders to break the siege and secure the city. So that's the story anyway. Okay, so moving on. On to Jerusalem. July 13th, 1098, the first Crusaders recapture Jerusalem. That's like a whole long story in itself. How long have I been going? 43 minutes? Godfrey becomes the leader of Jerusalem, but he won't wear the golden crown. He thought that was like rude to do that after Jesus had to wear a crown of thorns or something. So he just, yeah. But I guess he became, king of the kingdom of Jerusalem. Godfrey who? I should have his name. Dang it. I'll find it later. Okay, so I'm just trying to do this quick overview, and I keep stopping. But okay, the Second Crusade. King Baldwin of Bouillon, had founded the first Crusader state, the County of Edessa, during the First Crusade. 1144, County of Edessa is lost to, it says muzzles. I probably typed muzzies. So the Catholic Church launches this second major crusade announced by Pope Eugene III and led by Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany. I believe this is the one that's called the King's Crusade. So we got like the People's Crusade, which doesn't count, but happened. The first crusade is the Prince's Crusade, and then the second one is the King's Crusade, because there's a few kings involved. Their main focus was capturing Edessa, but King Baldwin III shifted the focus to capturing Damascus. Oh, I misspelled siege. The siege of Damascus was unsuccessful, and the three kings leading the siege, again, I misspelled it. I before E, Heidi. Not in my name anyway, but okay. Leading the siege, Doctor abandoned Damascus? What? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know why. That's probably a autocorrect word that's wrong. The three kings leading the siege abandoned Damascus. Okay. Saladin. Okay, this is an important character, Saladin. He is a Muslim leader who actually I like him. He seems like pretty cool, just in general. So okay, I guess we're just Saladin recaptured Jerusalem in 1187. So that first capture of Jerusalem was a whole like interesting story. Like they were going after one wall, and then they switched to another wall, and then to another wall. There's a bunch of cool art showing stuff from it. And at one point they had some big weapon. I forget what it was. Not a battering ram. They had one of those too, but I can't remember what it was. It might have been like a catapult. But it was like the Muslims were shooting at it and they got it caught on fire on purpose. And then it was burning. But then because that was this big thing was burning in the way of, they needed to get the battering ram in there. So like it switched from the Muslims like lit it on fire, and then they wanted the fire to keep going because the Christians were, what am I remembering wrong here? I'm sorry, I can't even remember what the story is. It's like they switched from wanting to light it on fire to trying to put the fire out so that they couldn't move it to get their battering ram in there. That was horrible. I'm sorry, I can't remember what the story is. I'll figure it out later. Anyway, Saladin recaptured Jerusalem in 1187. It's a whole story. We'll go back. He also took other crusader states, which led to the Third Crusade. What the hell? The Third Crusade, the King's Crusade. Okay, never mind. That wasn't the Second Crusade. Damn it. I'm sorry. This is the one they call the King's Crusade. I'm doing horrible. Okay, so the main goal of the Third Crusade, the King's Crusade, which I was wrong about, was to capture Jerusalem, get Jerusalem back in the Holy Land. I heard that the Pope had a heart attack when he received the news that Jerusalem had been taken and that he died. I'm not sure if that's true either. So the Zengid dynasty, Saladin, controlled Syria and brought the Egyptian forces under their control. King Henry of England and King Philip II of France, they had some beef going on, but they decided to bury the hatchet so that they could work together against Saladin. And, but Henry died in 1189. What do you mean, but? Oh, yeah. King Henry of England and King Philip II of France. So Henry died in 1189. So King Richard I of England succeeded him, and he continued the alliance to lead the Third Crusade. Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa. Holy Roman Empire. So that's the one in the west. King Richard I of England. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Holy Roman Empire Frederick Barbarossa also unites with them to join them in the fight. Marched with a huge army across Anatolia. Drowned in a river in 1190 before reaching the Holy Land. He was succeeded by Leopold V, Duke of Austria, but troops were bummed about Frederick's death, and a lot of them went home. Succeeding in recapturing many Christian states from Saladin, but Philip, this is bad English. Okay, so they recaptured a bunch of Christian states from Saladin, so that's good. But Philip and Leopold left soon after the siege of Acre. God, I misspelled siege every single time. I.e. After the siege of Acre, Philip leaves 10,000 French soldiers to continue under Richard with 5,000 silver marks to pay them. So he left, yeah. Richard engaged in continual negotiations with Saladin, though never once did Saladin ever come to meet with him in person. After Richard defeated Saladin at Jaffa, they signed a treaty. So there was a battle that Saladin was defeated in. They signed a treaty that allows unarmed Christian traders and pilgrims to enter the city, but Muslim got to keep Jerusalem. Okay, Fourth Crusade, launched by Pope Innocent III. I don't know what I was trying to type here. There's another weird typo. We want the kingdom of Jerusalem. That's probably what I meant to say. On their way to Jerusalem, January 1203, they entered an agreement with the Byzantine prince Alexios Angelos. He wanted them to help his father regain the throne. So there's so much to this, so many people and so many things, but this is this weird part where stuff happens. So financial and military assistance from the Byzantine Empire. Oh, he promised that if they would help him give his father back the crown. Crusaders reached Constantinople in June 1203, and in August 1203, Alexios is crowned co-emperor thanks to them. Yet he is quickly deposed and unable to deliver on compensation for them. Yeah, it was this whole thing where it's so complicated. Like, he didn't get to be the emperor, but they somehow managed to get them to agree to let him to be co-emperor. But he was quickly deposed and unable to deliver on compensation for them. They got nothing. I think he later also gets murdered. Alexios, oh yeah, right here. Angelos murdered February 8th, 1204. So the Western Crusaders decide to conquer Constantinople themselves. So, it's like Christian on Christian. I thought that was weird and unfortunate, because they sacked Constantinople and they raided it and took tons of their goods and like their valuables, gold, like all the stuff they had, and raided it basically. And a lot of their like holy items they had saved for forever got lost or stolen, and the Byzantine Empire suffered irreparably from this conquest and never really fully recovered from that. And it deepened the schism between East and West. Moving on to the Fifth Crusade, Pope Innocent III and his successor, Pope Honorius III, had organized crusaders who were led by King Andrew II of Hungary and Leopold VI, Duke of Austria. The main goal was to get Jerusalem, but they decided to head to Egypt first, because a lot of the power came from there. Like, it was the Ayyubid Empire or dynasty, Ayyubid in Egypt. So this goes on from 1213 to 1221. They're joined by John of Brienne, ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Okay, Prince Bohemond IV of Antioch and Hugh I of Cyprus. Cyprus is that little island just to the left of like what is now Israel, to the west of it. Okay, so October 1217, leaders hold a war council in Acre. Crusaders were defeated by the Muslim. Oh, no. The Crusaders defeated the Muslims at Bethsaida on River Jordan. I'm sorry, I don't know if I typed these right. I was like on my phone. 1221, King Andrew II fell sick and decided to return to Hungary with his army. Prince Bohemond and Hugh I also went home. Leopold and John are joined by Oliver of Cologne and his German army, and the Count of Holland, William I, and his army. They attacked Damietta in Egypt. Many lives were lost, plus there were diseases. They eventually got Damietta, but then people left. Some went home and some headed to Cairo, led by John of Brienne. Food gone, water gone. They decide to quit, but are attacked by Al-Hakim. Yeah, so they were like, this is hopeless. Let's just, never mind. We're going home. And then it was like, yeah, but too late though, because we're attacking you. Many were killed or surrendered. And I guess he wanted Damietta back. So they signed an 8-year peace agreement with Al-Hakim, and he said, I'll give you this piece of the true cross, but not really. Oh, yeah, he never had it. He promised them a piece of the true cross, which had been lost, but he was lying, and he couldn't because he didn't have it. He had never had it. Okay, on to the 6th Crusade, announced in 1228. It only lasted a year, and this is 7 years after the last one, the 5th. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II had played a role in gaining control over much of the Kingdom of Jerusalem due to his diplomacy. He had been crowned emperor in 1220. He married John of Brienne's daughter, Yolanda of Jerusalem, in 1225. So John of Brienne is the ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. In 1227, Acre was the capital of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So it's kind of weird. They don't actually have Jerusalem at this point. So Acre is the capital of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Frederick thinks he has the rightful claim to Jerusalem. Frederick II. So he leaves with his army from, damn it, that's not a word, Brindisi, Italy, to Acre. I don't know. An epidemic broke out suddenly, so he had to return to Brindisi, I guess, unless I typed that wrong. Gregory, the second Pope, Pope Gregory II, excommunicated Frederick for breaking his sacred crusader vow. In 1228, Frederick sails with his army to Syria, and then to Cyprus, and then to Jerusalem. But there are rumors about his excommunication. So that was fucking things up for him. He's trying to meet with barons and stuff, and they're like, weren't you excommunicated? But so diplomacy. Al-Hakim was dealing with rebellions in Syria. I forgot to mention, the first time they got Jerusalem, there was all that whole Sunni and Shiite thing going on that was messing the Muslims up a little bit. So that was a weakness they were having. Oh, Jason. Merry Christmas. Oh, thank you. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. I'm going to go see my mom. So that'll be cool. Merry Christmas to you too. I've got a Christmas tree for the first time possibly ever in my entire adult life. I might have had one in my 20s at one point, one of those years, but kind of weird. Okay, so he's trying to meet with barons, and he was excommunicated, so that's kind of messing it up. Al-Hakim was dealing with rebellion in Syria, so he agreed to diplomacy and relinquished Jerusalem, along with other cities along a narrow corridor of the coast: Nazareth, Jaffa, Sidon, and Bethlehem. But the agreement is that the Muslims get to control the Temple Mount area, Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and Transjordan Castle. So, the treaty was completed February 18th, 1229, with Al-Hakim, and Jews were prohibited from living in Jerusalem. So they're not allowed in there. Oh, I don't know if they're not allowed in at all or if they're just not allowed to live there. But it was supposed to be a 10-year truce called the Treaty of Jaffa and Tel Ajul. I just heard of it being called the Treaty of Jaffa. March 17th, 1229, Frederick is crowned King of Jerusalem. So he proved that you could, he succeeded. He captured the flag, everyone. And he did it without the Pope's blessing, and he did it with diplomacy. So it's kind of interesting. All right, on to the 7th Crusade. It began when the Khwarezmians captured Jerusalem in 1244, putting it back under Muslim control. So this is about 20 years later. Most kings were too busy at this time, but not King Louis IX of France, who launched the 7th Crusade. The other kings were busy fighting people and having problems. 1248, an army of 15,000 soldiers sails to Cyprus with King Louis IX. They sail to Cyprus first, and then they reach Damietta, 1249, capture it. Failure in Cairo So he has a failure in Cairo. He's taken captive and released for 800,000 Byzants. I guess that's what they called their money. Byzantine. Thanks, Tank. Merry Christmas. Thank you. And you too. Right back at you. Ditto. Okay, so failure in Cairo, taken captive, released for 800,000 Byzants, and Damietta surrendered to the Ayyubid Sultan of Egypt. That sucks. Went to Acre, started rebuilding. This is Louis IX still. He went to Acre, started rebuilding cities, and then he returned to France. He wasted tons of money from the treasury on a failed crusade. But he got famous and became stronger than the Holy Roman Emperor, so that's cool for him. Okay, the 8th Crusade. King Louis IX, again, it's him again, continued, oh, never mind, sorry. He continued to support financially and militarily the settlements in, it looks like Outremer, but I think it's pronounced Outremer, from 1254 to 1266. Time for another crusade! I think it is him. Is it Louis? So he lets Pope Clement IV know. March 24th, 1267, official announcement. Early summer 1270, they set sail to Tunis. Sicily, rivalry with Tunis. Okay, so there's a Sicily and Tunis have a rivalry. And King Charles, yeah, it is the same guy. So King Charles IX, he had a brother, Charles of Anjou, who had just captured the kingdom of Sicily. And he let, for some reason, this like deterred him from his original plan, because he had originally planned to sail to Outremer, but he thought he could somehow maybe benefit from this rivalry between Sicily and Tunis with his brother, Charles of Anjou. I don't know. So he went there instead. But there was an epidemic that broke out and kills most of the Crusaders. The king dies before his brother can arrive. So I guess, is that Charles? Charles is dead. The siege of Tunis abandoned. That was a fail. The Sultan of Tunis agrees to free trade for the Christians and to provide residence for the monks and priests. King Edward of England arrives with his crusaders, but the next day returns with Charles, with others, to Sicily. You know what? I don't know who died. I don't know which king died. I'm sorry. I think it was Charles, but I could be wrong. The next day, okay, so whatever. That was a really weak crusade. Now we're already on to the 9th. It's the last one. Starts in 1271 and ends in 1272. Edward sails to Acre from Sicily with his army of 1,000 men, which included 225 knights. He was accompanied by Louis's brother, Charles of Anjou. Baibars is the sultan he's the new Muslim in charge of stuff. So his name's Baibars, and he had taken a lot of territory. Edward's army was too small to fight, so instead they do raids. They took Nazareth. Tripoli was under siege by Baibars. There's tons of Christians there. Tries to create a Franco-Mongol alliance by sending an embassy to the Mongol ruler, Persia Abaga. Yeah, so there's Mongols involved in this now. Abaga, and these are like the descendants, or, it's not, what's the famous Mongol's name? Damn it. Starts with a G. I think it's pronounced Genghis. I've been saying Genghis my whole life, but Genghis Khan. It's his progeny in this. Anyway, Abaga sent 10,000 horsemen under General Samagar. Mongols pushed the Muslims south to Cairo, but they don't stay put. So, the Mongols withdrew a little while later, but after they left, the Muslims come at them again. November 1271, Baibars launches a counterattack, and the Mongols had left, and they were gone beyond the Euphrates, so they couldn't really come back to help again. King Hugh III of Cyprus arrives with an army under the command of Edward's brother Edmund. Edmund shows up to help. I just said that. Okay. Edward launches bigger raids because it gave him confidence that his brother showed up. Baibars abandons the siege of Tripoli and retreats. And I don't know why I wrote this, but it says, Christians have to unite. I think that's what Edward was saying. Knights of the Ibelin family of Cyprus. Okay, what about them? Sorry. Edward arranges a 10-year, 10-month, 10-day agreement between Hugh III and Baibars on May 1272 in Caesarea. Edmund leaves Edward, who stays to make sure the agreement is honored. An assassin tries to kill Edward, but Edward kills the assassin. And Edward was wounded by a poisoned dagger. I think I heard that this is where the word assassin came from, like for the first time. I don't know why that would be, but maybe that's true. Edward, wounded by a poisoned dagger, September 1272, he sails to Sicily. He receives news of the death of his son, John, and then a few months later, also of his father's death. So that sucks. And then back home in England, the middle of 1274, he's crowned king in August of 1274. There's some new Muslims in town now called the Mamluks, Mamluks. They start, they kind of broke their promise. They start asking for larger tributes and persecuting the pilgrims again during the time of the truce. Not cool. 1289, Mamluk Sultan Qalawun conquered Tripoli. It's like Qalawun. Huge losses on both sides. 1291, Pilgrim group in Acre is attacked. Christians retaliated by killing 19 Muslim merchants in a Syrian caravan. Acre is lost to the Mamluks, but Qalawun died, so that's cool. 1299, Ghezan Khan leads his Mongol army against the Mamluks. So they're trying to get in on it too, I guess. Withdraws from Syria in 1300 after leading many successful campaigns against the Mamluks. There's a second set of attacks against Muslims by Mamluks and Armenian... Wait, by the Mamluks? They are Muslims. I don't know, I'm confused. And the Armenian Kingdom of Sicilia, but they're defeated in 1303. Last Crusader fortress, Ruad Island, R-U-A-D, is taken by the Mamluks. I'm probably saying that wrong. Mamluks. After 208 years, the end. And then it talked about knights for a while. There's the Knights of Templar. There's the Knights Hospitallers, also known as the Order of St. John. The Teutonic Knights, founded in 1190 in Acre. 1023, the Hospitallers let us build a hospital. Oh, let us build a hospital for pilgrims to care for them. That was their pitch. And that turns into armed security for pilgrims, basically. And they would treat them in their hospitals too, of course, but eventually they started accompanying them on their pilgrimage. Founded by Gerald Tom, succeeded 1118 by Raymond de Puy, who organized a militia. They had special dress that was approved by the Pope Innocent IV, in 1248. Crack des Chevaliers and Margat in Syria. Took refuge in the Kingdom of Cyprus after Acre was captured in 1291. There's something that didn't happen, but the 10th Crusade, they tried to get it going, but nobody cared anymore, so it was scrapped. So, yeah, 1095 to 1291, that's the entire Crusades period. What was I just talking about? The Hospitallers. So those knights are displaced from Rhodes by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in 1522. The Hospitallers withdraw to Sicily, continue fighting Muslims and Barbary pirates. Then they plunder Muslim ships to survive, and then they have luxury. So they did well. They're still present in 120 countries around the world. They help to care for the poor, sick, elderly, disabled, and homeless. There's the Knights Templar, also known as the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ, and the Temple of Solomon, founded in 1119 and active between 1129 and 1312. They were given a wing. God, there's so many typos. They were given a wing in the Royal Palace in the Temple Mount in the Al-Aqsa Mosque to use as their headquarters. Supposedly built on the same spot as the ruins. Oh my God. So bad. Not ribs. Supposedly built on the same spot as the ruins of the Temple of Solomon, hence the name. Pope Innocent II exempted the knights from having to obey local laws. They could roam freely and they were considered an elite military order. Some Mac saved the financial. Oh my God. So many typos. Some of the Knights of Templar managed the financial infrastructure. So this is like the early form of banking, because you could like place your assets under the Templars while you're crusading. If you were a crusader, or if you're a pilgrim, you can make a deposit of your valuables, from your home country, get like a document for the value of the deposit, and then when you get to the Holy Land, you find a Templar and show them that, and you receive valuables of equal amount. So that's kind of interesting. Made traveling safer, also helped the Templars finance their ventures to build massive stone cathedrals and castles. And I believe that the Templars would rush out ahead of like the Crusader army to like break through, they would like go first and stuff. Frederick II has been able to conquer Jerusalem without their help, and by 1303, when the Mamluks took over all the places, the order basically died. They continued many other businesses, but were disbanded in 1312 by Pope Clement, although there's conspiracy theories saying they're still around, still doing something, doing stuff. That's like kind of where people think Freemasons came from, I think. I could be totally wrong about that. Okay, so the Teutonic Knights is the third one. They're also called the Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem, founded in 1190 in Acre. They're still around. They moved their base to Transylvania in 1211, displaced by King Andrew II of Hungary in 1225, took over many Prussian territories, powerful naval power in the Baltic Sea region, white coats with a black cross on it. Oh my goodness, that took so much longer. I always make these too long. Okay, so that was just that one documentary I watched that I took notes on. How did Pope Urban II justify the First Crusade? You know what? I'm kind of sick of talking. Maybe we can look at a video for a minute. I like Knights and Generals. You guys ever watch that? You see that? Which one should I do? Should we look at the People's Crusade? Pause. I hope I should. Let me know if you can't hear it. I can't remember if I hit share audio.
In our previous episode, we examined the elements and people who directly led to a unique call to arms at aiding the Eastern Roman Empire on the way to reclaiming Jerusalem. This was a carefully planned endeavor, coordinated with the Emperor Alexios Komnenos, aimed at directing the martial prowess of the Frankish nobility towards a common enemy. But as Urban II sent out his bishops to spread his fiery speech, another man would pick up the mantle and irreversibly change the Christians' relations.
I didn't even talk about the guy I like a lot. His name is Baldwin IV. He had leprosy. He was king of Jerusalem. Bigfoot's burner account. Yo, what's good? Hey, I just got done reading like a big long thing, and now I wanted to take a break and like maybe watch some of these videos I've got. There's one I watched that movie. I don't know if I can show any of it, but it's called like. I just like filmed my TV a minute. Can you see it? This was the scene. It was played by God, my brain's not working. Fight Club guy, Edward Norton. He was playing. He's like all covered up because he had leprosy. I've got his Wikipedia page pulled up too. He's just an interesting character. He was, king of the kingdom of Jerusalem for a while, as they called it. And this is just a scene from that movie.
A king may move a man, a father may claim a son. But remember that even when those who move you be kings, or men of power, your soul is in your keeping alone. When you stand before God, you cannot say, but I was told by others to do thus, or that virtue was not convenient at the time. this will not suffice.
I don't know why I filmed that and liked it, apparently. Okay, so anyway, here's this.
With a different religion. You won't be inspiring a crusade anytime soon if you can't write a good speech, and that's where our sponsor Grammarly comes in. It's a desktop app that helps you write more efficiently and clearly, and...
No. Okay.
Starting out in Berry, Peter began touring the urban centres of northern France, and before long, he captivated the hearts and minds of thousands of people.
What's Swabia?
One of his supporters described him by writing, "Outdoors he wore a woolen tunic, which revealed his ankles, and above it a hood. He wore a cloak to cover his upper body and a bit of his arms, but his feet were bare. He drank wine and ate fish, but scarcely ever ate bread." Another eyewitness reports, "We saw him wander through cities and towns, spreading his teaching, surrounded by so many people, given so many gifts, and acclaimed for such great piety that I don't ever remember anyone equally honored. Whatever he did or said seemed like something almost divine. Even the hairs of his mule were torn out as though they were relics." Peter was an extremely charismatic preacher who told the story of how he visited Jerusalem a few years earlier and saw firsthand how the Muslims were mistreating the Christians and desecrating the holy sites. According to him, as he slept in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, he received a vision of Christ who handed him a round letter that instructed all Christendom from all parts of the world to take up arms and journey to Jerusalem to fight against the eternal mission of the city with all its pertinent lands. There's no evidence that Peter ever made such a journey, but that did stop thousands from joining him as he traveled from one city to the next, warning that the last days were at hand, and that Christians have to travel to Jerusalem to battle the Antichrist. A more moderate approach targeting the warrior class, Peter appealed to a larger group of people, mostly commoners, at a particularly sensitive moment in time. 1095 saw the occurrence of a meteor shower, an aurora borealis, a lunar eclipse, the passage of a comet, blood-colored clouds, and a number of fascinating stories. Some said that the Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne had come back from the dead, ready to lead his people into Jerusalem. When word of the crusade began to spread, people began disfiguring and tattooing themselves, claiming miracles and divine signs. But arguably the largest contributor to the widespread frenzy was the ongoing series of plagues. If we take a look at the multiple and instant writers during this period, a trend starts to show. During the period between 1092 and 1095, there are over 40 mentions of plague, peaking in 1094 with 25 reported plagues, often accompanied by famine. Surrounded by Catholic imagery of damnation in the form of frescoes and grotesque sculptures, the notion of abandoning the little they had to journey to the land of milk and honey, that is how many Christians thought of the Holy Land, suddenly seemed contrary to popular belief.
I don't want to talk shit on it too much, but it just like I don't know what the big attraction was. Well, I get it, it's the religion, I get it, but it's just it's sand.
So-called People's Crusade had a large portion of nobles who joined.
It looks pretty in some pictures, you know, but I don't know. Moving on.
Peter's group.
Archie!
And those nobles would be the ones who were in charge of the crusade and were about to unleash chaos on Germany. Still, it is important to mention that although there were some members of this movement who embarked on the journey for materialistic reasons, this was very much the exception rather than the norm. After passing through Champagne in March 1096.
I didn't even mention Richard the Lionheart yet. So it was like Richard the Lionheart. Sorry, I'm so bad at this. He was fighting with Saladin at one point. I forget which one it was. There's so many crusades. But Saladin was kind of cool. Like at one point, Richard the Lionheart, which he was named that. But this has nothing to do with what we're watching right now, by the way. This is the People's Crusade it's talking about. But Richard the Lionheart supposedly had reached down the throat of a lion and pulled his heart out. So that was like the story of why it was called that. but he got really sick in the middle of one of their fighting times. This was before the Treaty of Jaffa. He's the one who signed the Treaty of Jaffa with Saladin, I believe. And anyway, Saladin sent him fresh fruit while he was sick, which was nice of him. Okay, back to the People's Crusade.
Peter moved into Lorraine before spending Easter in Cologne. He sent smaller parties to preach in the surrounding cities, while assembling a force of 15,000 men, women, and children. Peter was joined by many minor nobles, among them Walter Sans-Souvois, Renaud Bray, Geoffrey of Burel, and many others. The plan was to take the route towards Jerusalem, which the local German populace was very aware of.
Where's Germany? Is the Holy Roman Empire like kind of supposed to be Germany? I see Salzburg down here, so I guess there's Bavaria. I guess it's this area. It just doesn't say it on the map.
Great German pilgrimage of 1064. This pilgrimage was led by a number of major German clerics, among them Archbishop Siegfried of Mainz, and although possibly thousands of pilgrims were killed by local Bedouins in Caesarea, most of them reached Jerusalem and returned home by sea. However, this was another big deviation from Urban's route and timing, which intended for the crusade to cross the Adriatic and land in Dyrrhachium on August 15th, 1096.
Yeah, they weren't
coinciding with the Byzantine harvest, a date
church.
Alexios Komnenos knew ahead of time and prepared for by sending vast amounts of grain merchants and Latin translators to the region. Peter took the time to preach in Cologne to recruit more German lords, but Walter was impatient and decided to leave as soon as the feast was over with a few thousand companions. As a result of this schism, the crusade was now divided into 5 groups, one under Peter, one commanded by Walter, and 3 more under the leadership of nobles.
There's so much
who
information
the
to
words
cover
of the initial call even further and weaponized them against the thriving Jewish community.
I always pick topics that are way too big and all-encompassing to like cover in an hour.
The series of events which we now call
we're just going to do the entire Crusades when there's 9 of them.
Rhineland massacres would become a turning point in history.
And this doesn't even really count.
This was not the first time when a minority was attacked by the majority, but the scale and nature of these attacks would mark a new chapter and set a precedent which would...
Oh yeah, so, and that first time when the Crusaders conquered Jerusalem, word has it they weren't too cool. They were vicious and murderous and like really like killing, not very nice about it.
Recur numerous times in the centuries to come.
There was another crusade where supposedly they became cannibals at one point. There's a lot of suffering and starving, and like Saladin knew where the water. He had the home court advantage, and he knew where the water was, so he would protect one water source and fill up all the other ones so that they couldn't get to water. That made me thirsty.
Contemporary scholars writing after the conquest of Jerusalem tried their best to blame on Peter or peasant greed, with the goal of distancing the more successful Prince's Crusade from the failed People's Crusade, but not because of the mass slaughter of the Jews, which the Church unilaterally saw as a grave sin, but because after many of them were forcibly baptized, they reconverted once the storm had passed. But how did this all start, and why did these 3 groups begin the rampage in the first place? Even before the army crossed the Rhine, word spread proclaiming, "Do we need to travel to distant lands in the east to attack the enemies of God, when there are Jews right before our eyes, a race that is the greatest enemy of God? We've got it all backwards." Days went by as children asked their parents if this was Jerusalem, at the site of each new city. And
are we there yet? Are we there yet?
The growing excitement turned into impatience. Most of the German nobles were busy fighting amongst each other, but some of them quickly became obsessed with the promise of indulgence in return for military service. Count Emicho of Leiningen added his own ideas to the crusade by tattooing a cross on himself and proclaiming that he was the last emperor, the one who would unite East and West, before going to Jerusalem and wiping out Judaism. His well-equipped and well-organized army unleashed a wave of violence, which began on May 3rd.
I mean, that's kind of weird because Jerusalem was controlled by Muslims at the time, not.
1096 at the newly settled city of Speyer by storming into the synagogue. The bishop of Speyer, who had heard of the coming danger, did everything he could to protect the Jewish populace, and as a result of his actions, only 11 of them were killed. 15 days later, Emiko descended upon the city of Worms, where according to the Mainz Chronicle, they took a trampled corpse of theirs, which had been buried 30 days previously, and carried it through the city, saying, "Behold what the Jews have done to our comrade. They took a Gentile and boiled him in water. Then they poured the water into our wells in order to kill us." Many Jews, forewarned by the events in Speyer, had already sought the protection of the Bishop of Worms. They looked on from the sanctuary of his palace as those of their brethren that had chosen to remain at home were massacred. The Crusaders demanded that they convert, and those who did were spared, but the majority of them refused. Emiko laid siege to the bishop's palace, and once his soldiers broke in, they discovered that the Jews inside had decided to take their own lives rather than fall to their hands. Only 5 days later, the band was ready in Mainz, where once again the local archbishop took a massive amount of money in return for sheltering his Jewish son.
It's like, this whole thing was initially supposed to be to, like, lend a hand to the Byzantine Empire. They didn't really succeed at that very well.
The rest of the populace rallied
in fact, they sacked it themselves at one point.
Around the Jews. But after a 2-day siege, some of them opened the gates, which the Crusaders saw as a miracle. "Behold, the gates have opened by themselves. All this the crucified has done for us, so that we might avenge his blood on the Jews." 1,014 of them died in a single day. Hearing of this, the citizens of Cologne took action and massacred their own Jewish population, destroying every Torah scroll they found along the way, while other cities like Regensburg.
The same thing with the what's it called? The Black Plague. Cologne, that happens in Cologne.
Were spared after mass forced conversions. The second group, under a monk named Folkmar, decided to pass through Bavaria and travel to Prague, inspiring another Jewish pogrom on June the 1st, while the Duke was away. Another group with at least 15,000 followers, led by a man named Kochal, also committed atrocities along the Danube. It is important to note that the majority of these leaders would later join the Prince's Crusade, whose leaders also attacked members of the...
Hold on, I'm just gonna skip around because I haven't even been able to look at like anything. Frederick II, Crusader States, Treaty of Jaffa, Battle of Jaffa. Oh, this lady was kind of interesting. Margaret of Beverly, sometimes called Margaret of Jerusalem, was a Christian pilgrim and crusader, because there were women too. You know, not a lot, of course, but in the late 12th century in the Holy Land, probably born in the middle 12th century, she traveled to the Holy Land in the mid-1180s on a pilgrimage, but was caught up in the events surrounding the Third Crusade. She partook in the siege of Jerusalem by Saladin in 1187, spent several months as an enslaved captive, and then took part in another battle near Antioch in 1188. Yeah, she was like running around, you know, trying to help and pour water on fires and stuff and help with supplies and stuff, and left the Holy Land in 1191 after some time spent traveling Europe. Eventually became a nun at the Cistercian monastery of something I'm not going to be able to pronounce. I don't know. It's just don't give Wikipedia money, by the way, because they use it for shitty things. So anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to mention her. She was doing stuff. She fashioned a helmet from a cooking pot. Oh, does not make it possible that she... Oh, that's just a story. What? Stereotypical medieval imagery of women warriors being strange. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, moving on. I just wanted to mention her. She's a woman, I guess. I don't know. Almeric. What else is there? Here's some letters that were written during the Crusades. I don't know. I guess I should stop soon. I always make these go on way too long. Oh, Sigurd. He was like a Viking. He was a crusader. Sigurd the Crusader, King of Norway from 1103 to 1130. His rule, together with his half-brother Oystein, has been regarded by historians as a golden age for the medieval kingdom of Norway. He's otherwise famous for leading the Norwegian Crusade, 1107 to 1110, earning the eponym the Crusader, and was the first European... Oh, that was 1107 to 1110. Oh, okay, that was during this time. And was the first European king to personally participate in a crusade. One of the three sons of... Stop. King Magnus III, the other two being Oystein and Olaf. They were illegitimate sons of the king with different mothers. To avoid feuds, the three half-brothers co-ruled the kingdom from 1103. Sigurd ruled alone after Olaf died in 1115 and Oystein in 1123. Before being proclaimed King of Norway, he was styled as the King of the Islands. I don't know. I heard Rollo mentioned at one point, and I remember him from that Viking TV show. He led the crusade, the Norwegian Crusade, to support the newly established Kingdom of Jerusalem, which had been founded after the First Crusade. He was the first European king to lead a crusade. His feats earned him the nickname Jorsalafari. Oh, he was greeted by King Baldwin I of Jerusalem. He received a warm welcome and spent much time with the king. I like that Baldwin guy. I think it's the same guy. And it might have been Baldwin II, actually. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, Viking Crusader. What was the purpose of the Crusades? Organized by Western European Christians after centuries of Muslim wars of expansion. Their primary objectives were to stop the expansion of Muslim states, to reclaim for Christianity the Holy Land in the Middle East, and to recapture territories that had formerly been Christian. Many participants also believed that undertaking what they saw as a holy war was a means of redemption and a way of achieving expiation of sins. And, I don't know if they had this word already, but the Muslims were using jihad as, so Christians are doing crusades, Muslims are doing jihad. Who were the leaders? Were the crusades successful? The first crusade, called in response to a request for help from the Byzantine Emperor Alexius Comnenus, spelled with a C this time, was astonishingly successful. The Crusaders conquered Nicaea in Turkey and Antioch, and then went on to seize Jerusalem, and they established a string of Crusader-ruled states. However, after the Muslim leader Zengi captured one of them, the second crusade, called in response, was defeated at Dorylaeum near Nicaea and failed in an attempt to conquer Damascus. The third crusade, called after the Sultan Saladin conquered the Crusader state of Jerusalem, resulted in the capture of Cyprus and the successful siege of Acre, now in Israel. And Richard I's forces defeated those of Saladin at the Battle of Arsuf and at Jaffa. Richard signed a peace treaty, that's Richard the Lionheart, with Saladin, allowing Christians access to Jerusalem. The Fourth Crusade, rather than attacking Egypt, then the center of Muslim power, sacked the Byzantine Christian city of Constantinople. The Fourth Crusade fell. Big fell. They attacked their own. The whole point was to protect the Byzantine Empire. Damn it. None of the following crusades were successful. The capture of Acre in 1291 by the Mamluk Sultan Al-Ashraf Khalil marked the end of Crusader rule in the Middle East. It's just as well. Mormons believe that Utah is the new Holy Land, so I don't know why I'm mentioning that. It's just interesting. The Crusades slowed what were the lasting results of the Crusades? The Crusades slowed the advance of Islamic power and may have prevented Western Europe from falling under Muslim suzerainty. I don't know what that means. The Crusader states extended trade with the Muslim world, bringing new tastes and foods to Europe. Yeah, that's a weird thing. There's commerce going on even while they were like supposed to be fighting each other. So like there were caravans going through areas controlled by Christians and vice versa that were like relatively safe. You know, it's kind of weird. So there was commerce taking place and trading. Crusades had a marked impact on the development of Western historical literature, bringing a plethora of chronicles and eyewitness accounts. However, Constantinople never returned to its former glory after being sacked by the Fourth Crusade. What the hell? What a fuck up. And the schism between Eastern and Roman Catholic Christianity was further entrenched. The Islamic world saw the Crusaders as cruel invaders, which helped engender distrust and resentment toward the Christian world. Yeah, so I heard that the Byzantines, I don't know if that's what they're called, the people in the Byzantine Empire, those Christians, that they were sort of regarded as like kind of snobbish. And I don't know, I guess they kind of looked down on the Latin Christians. Wait, are they considered Latin? I don't know, the Western Christians. There are stories of both Muslim and Christian women taking up arms and armor to defend themselves during the fighting, or convincing fleeing men to stay and fight. Anna Komnena, the daughter of the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I Komnenos, wrote an account of the First Crusade that is used by historians today. Yeah. Yep. Okay, what else have I got up here? I always have like a ton of links open and then I don't even... Raymond IV Count of Toulouse. I don't really care about that. Okay, I had a couple of interesting ones pulled up. What the far right gets wrong about the Crusades from Time magazine. I don't know. Like, they mention... You know what's weird is that Dan Brown book, for some reason he ends the book by, like, referencing the Christchurch mosque murder shootings in New Zealand. I guess he had something written on one of his guns that was like something to do with the Crusades. This is a very vague connection to... I just thought it was weird that he mentioned that in his book. I kind of resented it. I didn't understand what that had to do with anything. And he also mentioned... Damn it. I don't know, like George W. Bush, when he announced the war on terror, he called it a crusade, and that was stupid too. Heidi, I'd be listening live from Nikki Fruit Loops 370. I'd be listening live, but I'm on another panel at the moment. Just wanted to say hello. I thought that said planet at first. I'm glad you're not on another planet. Class continues. Yeah, I'm almost done anyway. But yeah, so here's this stupid Time magazine article talking about militia groups and stupid shit and white supremacists and bullshit. I don't know. This is kind of what I was talking about, how they use this to I don't know. I'm just going to X out. That was stupid. And then there's another thing I pulled up. Thank you. You're welcome. What else have we got here? I'm going to X out of that. I think this is... I don't know. I'll just X out of that too. Seljuk Empire. Just gonna X out on that. What is this? How did Pope Urban II justify the crusade? It is true that in the Ten Commandments we read that it is not permitted to kill, but we do have a duty to protect ourselves and our neighbors in times of war or persecution. The helpless needed to be defended in Palestine and the holy sites liberated from oppression. We must not forget that the Greek Emperor Alexius Komnenos had sent letters to Pope Urban II asking for aid against the infidels, representing that unless assistance was extended immediately, the capital with all its holy relics must soon fall into the hands of the barbarians. And I guess it basically did, but it might have been their fellow Christians, kind of, at least in the one situation. Okay, I'll accept the cookie. How did they justify it? The Christians were not long in realizing that power had fallen into new hands. 3,000 Christian pilgrims were insulted and persecuted in every way. The churches in Jerusalem were destroyed or turned into stables. I mean, you got to fight back sometimes. You got to show that you're not going to just get walked all over, you know. Unfortunately, a shitload of people died too, though. So I don't know. They got to improve their fighting abilities with all this. So there's that. Robert the Monk, the Jested version. Oh, these are the different versions of. Mentions the Maccabees here. Huh. Letter of instruction to the Crusaders, December 1095. Urban bishop and servant of the servants of God, to all the faithful, both princes and subjects, waiting in Flanders, greeting apostolic grace and blessing. Your brotherhood, we believe, has long since learned from many accounts that a barbaric fury has deplorably afflicted and laid waste the churches of God in the regions of the Orient. More than this, blasphemous to say it has even grasped in intolerable servitude its churches and the holy city of Christ, glorified his passion and resurrection. Grieving with pious concern at the calamity, we visited the regions of Gaul and devoted ourselves largely to urging the princes of the land and their subjects to free the churches of the East. We solemnly enjoined upon them at the Council of Auvergne the accomplishment of such an undertaking as a preparation for the remission of all their sins, and we have constituted our most beloved son, Adhemar, Bishop of Puy, leader of this expedition and undertaking in our stead, so that those who perchance may wish to undertake this journey should comply with his commands as if they were our own, and submit fully to his loosings or bindings as far as shall seem to belong to such an office. If moreover there are any of your people whom God has inspired to this vow, let them know that he, Adhemar, will set out with the aid of God on the day of the Assumption of the Blessed Mary, and that they can then attach themselves to his following. Okay. As happened frequently in Muslim countries, stronger and less tolerant Muslims took over control of the lands, and the whole of Asia Minor up to the Bosporus soon fell under Turkish Muslim control, so that was really coming right up to the borders of Byzantium, which, even though there were theological discrepancies, had not yet ceased to be friends with the West. That happened after the Fourth Crusade. Okay, so yeah, that wasn't good. I just think that's interesting. It's like, okay. The whole point was to help them and protect them and cause them to have issues. The Emperor of the East in Constantinople asked the Pope for a contingent of knights to help the Byzantine armies hold back the Seljuks from overrunning the Eastern Empire. Now I'm not going to retcon just war theory into the mix, because it obviously hadn't been invented yet, and it would be crazy to This is just someone's. I don't know. Okay, whatever. I'm going to X out of that. Here's a map. Kingdom of Jerusalem with its environs at the time of the Crusades. Egypt, Arabia. Yeah, at one point when they were doing fighting in Egypt, there was like an embarrassing, I guess it was Charles, I think. Or no, not Charles. It was Louis. I think it was Louis the Ninth. He got really sick. He got like dysentery and got captured and was humiliated, had to cut a hole in his pants. And I think this was after, like, they just did not have the home court advantage at all. Like, they thought that for some reason, a lot of the time when they would lose battles, they're like, it's because of our sins. And it's like, no, you should probably just plan it out better. It's not always just because of your sins. But like was it Ethiopians helping fight? I don't know. It was like they removed some sort of barrier that caused the Nile to totally flood them. And they were like up to their chest in water, and they all, clambered on top of trying to get on the boats and sunk the boats and just got their asses kicked. It'd be nice if we could just protect the land we do have, just keep that and leave it at that, maybe. Seljuks. Edessa. Okay, you see it. There's Cyprus. That's where the Knights Templar lived for a while. So that's Tripoli? Okay, I was totally thinking of somewhere else. All right. X out of that. What is this? Oh, I thought this was a little bit interesting. It says, why were the Crusades unsuccessful? And this guy says, by most metrics, the Crusades were extremely successful. I suppose you're wondering why the Crusades weren't able to maintain a Christian state in Palestine for all times. The general answer would be that nothing lasts forever. What's remarkable about the Crusades is that they were so successful and that the Christian state in the Levant lasted so incredibly long. Let me substantiate the first, and then I'll explain to you why the Kingdom of Jerusalem eventually fell. One thing we must realize is how powerful the Muslim Caliphate was at the time. Here's a map. The red and the green aren't the same empire per se, but they're both Muslims, and both fought and lost miserably against the Franks. Okay. The First Crusade was summoned at the request of the ruler of Constantinople and had Muslim horsemen with trebuchet shots of their walls getting closer. The Byzantine Empire was on its way down and had recently lost most of Anatolia, and it looked like the tide was going to submerge them. They cried for help west. For fellow Christians, they actually recently had a major schism to come help them stop the Muslim expansion. For them, it was never about the Holy Land. The First Crusade was mainly manned by France. Can you imagine that? The Caliphate has 4 times the territory and population of France. Yeah, they were frequently outnumbered. They were in the process of winning the war on Byzance. They were fighting at home. They were backed by a civilization 100 years ahead of that of France. It is quite incredible that an army of knights and peasants from France not only managed to break through the expansion front that the Turks were pushing towards Constantinople, but advanced 2,000 kilometers into the heart of their land, capturing city after city until they eventually captured and held one of their holy sites, Jerusalem. Maybe the Caliphate was distracted when it happened. Maybe they got lucky. You'd expect the retribution to be swift and unforgiving, right? Wrong. The Franks weren't kicked out of Palestine until 2 freaking centuries later at the Siege of Acre. It's a bit like if you were asking why the conquest of Iberia by Muslim armies was so unsuccessful. In both cases, it was a resounding success that lasted for very, very long. It didn't last forever, but nothing does, so that's okay. I mean, all right. It begs the question, though, how come a lower tech army from a smaller, less powerful country was able to stab the Caliphate in the liver like this? As explained in the book The Crusades Through Arab Eyes, it boils down to determination. A parallel with the Vietnamese victory against the USA would be relevant. The Muslim feudal system was a mess. Every kinglet wanted nothing more than for its rivals to be weakened. The arrival of a single-minded horde of fanatics in Anatolia and Palestine kicked the anthill in complete panic. Every time a Muslim leader tried to organize a concerted response to the invasion, he was seen as too ambitious by his peers and got assassinated, often through the original assassins. It took 100 years of Muslim debacle for a leader to strike some fear in the heart of the Crusaders and its only successor, Saladin, who managed to wrench Jerusalem from their clutches. It didn't end there, though. The Crusaders still controlled most of the Palestinian coast and would keep doing so for another century. As to why they eventually failed, the Franks were good at war. Everyone will agree to that. Against a constellation of small kingdoms, they could play one against another for a long time. They lasted as long as that was the case. When one Muslim sultan managed to unite Egypt and Syria against them, there was nothing they could do. The distance from home started playing against them. There's nothing you can do against that kind of pressure. The Kingdom of Jerusalem was an anomaly. It should have never existed. That failing, it shouldn't have lasted. That it existed and lasted is a wonder to everyone involved, but if the Muslims hadn't kicked the Franks out, the Mongols were waiting in line. You can only stand up to the flow of history for so long. Okay, that's interesting. Moving on. Oh, yeah. Why did the Crusaders attack Constantinople? Yeah, I got stuck on that. I really was like, what the hell? To avenge Alexius IV's death and to repay the debts owed to them. I thought maybe they might have killed him, but I guess maybe not. Because he owed them money or something. No one expected the Christians to turn on each other. Though the attack on Constantinople was part of the Fourth Crusade, it was not the main aim. The main goal of Pope Innocent III was to mount a resistance against the Muslim invasion of Jerusalem. His strategy was to send the Crusaders to conquer the then powerful Islamic State, the Egyptian Ayyubid Sultanate. However, several incidents caused the Crusaders to divert course and attack Constantinople. The killing of the Roman Catholic inhabitants of Constantinople. Oh yeah, so there were a bunch of them that got killed first, I guess. One event that contributed to the sacking of Constantinople was the murder of Roman Catholics in Constantinople. Roman Catholics, also referred to as Latins, formed a majority of the populace in the city, along with the indigenous Eastern Orthodox. The Latins controlled most of the trade in the city due to the influence of Emperor Alexios Komnenos, spelled with a K again. This made them wealthy and angered the Eastern Orthodox population who attacked them. Historical sources estimate that the Roman Catholics lost about 60,000 lives during the conflict. Jeez. About 4,000 of those who survived ended up in slavery. The Eastern Orthodox people also destroyed the Latin republics of Genoa and Pisa, leaving them in complete ruins. These unprovoked attacks caused a vast division between Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox Christians. The Normans revenged the death, maybe they mean avenge, the death of the Catholics in Constantinople. Another event that led to tensions between the two Christian empires was the occupation of Thessalonica by the Normans. The Normans, who were part of the Roman Catholic Church, attacked Thessalonica in the Eastern Empire. They brought the city to its knees in 1185, 3 years after the Eastern Orthodox attacked the Catholics. As a result, about 7,000 Eastern Orthodox citizens in the Byzantine Empire lost their lives. This was one of the worst attacks on the city of Thessalonica, which deepened the divide between the two empires. The unfortunate event gave rise to Emperor Isaac II Angelos of the Byzantine Empire. He played a pivotal role in the attack on Constantinople. The Fourth Crusade and the attack on Zara. In 1202, Pope Innocent III announced the Fourth Crusade. This was a response to the Muslim invasion and control of the city of Jerusalem. The idea was to fight the Egyptian Sultanate, the most powerful Islamic country at the time. The people of Venice agreed to build ships that would transport over 33,000 crusaders to fight the Sultanate. For Venice to transport the crusaders, the soldiers had to pay them 85,000 silver marks. The crusaders paid an initial 35,000 silver marks. However, when pressed further, the crusaders could only come up with another 14,000 silver marks. The cost was too much for the soldiers to bear, and it depleted their resources. The Venetians held the crusaders to ransom unless they paid the money in full. When the Venetians realized crusaders couldn't pay, they forced them to sign an agreement. The agreement was that the crusaders would attack smaller rival ports of the Venetian. They did this to put them out of business and make Venice the preferred port in the sub-region. The crusaders agreed and attacked the port of Zara, which fell after a brief battle. The Pope was annoyed at the crusaders and Venetians for attacking their fellow Christians. He decided to punish them, but changed his mind after he learned that the crusaders were forced into attacking Zara. Yeah, he was mad. Why did the Crusaders attack Constantinople? Motives for the attack. One reason was that the Venetians wanted to exact revenge on the Byzantine Empire for the murder of the Catholics. The Venetians were Catholics, and the murder of their comrades was fresh in their memory. Thus, they coerced the Crusaders to attack Constantinople as revenge. Also, the Venetian leader Doge Enrico Dandolo suffered blindness in Byzantium and blamed them for it. Okay, so he did nothing to stop the Venetians from destroying Constantinople. Apart from the debts the Crusaders owed, their leaders also took bribes to attack Constantinople. However, that was not all. The Crusaders also received a juicy offer from the exiled prince Alexios IV Angelos of Byzantium. Alexios IV Angelos, who co-reigned with Isaac II, fled to Swabia after his exile. There he met a leader of the Crusaders, Boniface of Montferrat. and offered to pay the Crusaders' debts in full. All he wanted was for the Crusaders to attack Constantinople in return. The Crusaders found it challenging to resist the offer, which included 200,000 silver marks and 10,000 extra troops. These offers, coupled with bribed leaders, allowed the Crusaders to sack Constantinople. The Crusaders set off and landed at Constantinople in June 1203. Okay, so they attacked the Tower of Galata, they attacked Constantinople, took control of 25 towers, they rendered 20,000 citizens homeless. This isn't good. I don't like this. After Alexius III left, the officials of the empire reinstalled Isaac II as king instead of Alexius IV. This angered the Crusaders, who refused to recognize Isaac II as king. Instead, they insisted Alexius IV be made co-emperor. They did this. They're like, you can be the assistant to the manager. They did this so that Alexius IV would fulfill all the promises he made to them. When Alexius IV came to power, he didn't have enough resources to fulfill his promise to the Crusaders. This was because the former king emptied the kingdom's treasury. That's a sign of a dying empire right there. Just thinking about that omnibus bill right now. Yeah, so going on in the real world right now, Zelensky gave a stupid speech to Congress. I can't remember if that was yesterday or the day before, but I don't like him. And they keep posting pictures of like the American flag mixed with the Ukrainian flag with their colors and stuff, and it's basically not cool. What is it, like a $1.7 trillion bill? I can't remember how much it is, but it's a lot. Protecting other countries' borders, not our own. We suck. Like, we're not doing well. I'm just seeing a little bit of a, we're going to end up like the Byzantine Empire, probably. Anyway, so Alexius IV forced his citizens to donate their gold and jewelry to offset the debts he owed the Crusaders. This angered the citizens and led to several unrests within the kingdom. These tensions led to the murder of King Alexius IV. The new king, Alexius Ducas, refused to pay the debts of Alexius IV, which he owed the Crusaders. This made the Crusaders angry, and they sacked Constantinople for a couple of days. They wanted to avenge the death of Alexius IV and demanded the repayment of their debts. So that explains that, I guess. That sucks. They never fully recovered from that bullshit. What is this? Oh, this is the guy. I was reading his Wikipedia page. Baldwin IV of Jerusalem. This is the guy that I played, that Edward Norton was playing. He's called Baldwin IV, the Leper, king of Jerusalem from 1174 until his death in 1185. So not for very long, I guess. It's 10 years. He was admired by his contemporaries and later historians for his willpower and dedication to the Latin kingdom in the face of debilitating leprosy, which eventually left him blind and unable to use either his hands or feet. Yeah, we don't really know how he got leprosy. It's kind of weird. He ruled a thriving realm and succeeded in protecting it from the great Ayyubid Muslim ruler Saladin. Yeah, so I guess he was a kid, and like one of his tutors noticed that like when other kids would pinch one of his arms, he like didn't react or couldn't feel it. So I guess that's one of the early signs. It took him forever to get diagnosed with it. If he had been diagnosed with it earlier, he might not have been allowed to become the king of Jerusalem. But he was able to because they didn't diagnose it in time, I guess. But like he was cool, he was brave. I just kind of like him. Like he insisted on fighting, even though he had to use his knees since he couldn't really feel his hands very much, and that's how he would ride a horse and stuff. I think he was actually trained by Arabs on horse riding and stuff, and then later on, it started getting worse and worse, and he was like not in the greatest shape, and he had to be carried around on what they called a litter. But, he did his best, even in his unfortunate situation, which it started to get really worse when he went through puberty. So he somehow got it even as a kid, like early on in his life. His parents were Almeric, then the Count of Jaffa and Ascalon, and Agnes of Courtenay. Yeah, though he had not been diagnosed, the High Court must have been aware of the royal physician's suspicions that Baldwin had contracted leprosy. Yet there was no viable alternative. Baldwin was the king's only son. From his second marriage, Almeric had 2 daughters, of which only Isabella survived infancy. It says female succession was expressly allowed, but Sibylla was an unmarried adolescent and Isabella was only 2 years old. Baldwin could not walk unsupported or use his hands from 1183. Due to inability to blink, his cornea dried and he became blind. Jeez, that sucks. Leprosy sucks. But he was still doing his job, you know. I don't know. He's just cool. And then he died. Okay. I'm going to stop soon. This Knights Templar. Whatever. I don't know. I think that might be kind of it. Papal letters. You can read letters. Crusades were a series of religious wars sanctioned by the Latin Church in the medieval period. Most commonly known are the campaigns in the Eastern Mediterranean aimed at recovering the Holy Land from Islamic rule. Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of material to cover. I chose too much as usual. Death estimates. Provided below are various death estimates for the Crusades to the east, roughly covering the period from 1095 to 1291. The extreme range of figures from 1 million to 9 million suggests the futility of trying to pin down such a figure with any precision. Modern historians of the Crusades tend not to make or trust such estimates, as they are skeptical of the ability of anyone to count the deaths of participants over such long periods of time, nearly 200 years, with any precision, and weary of the methodological problems this entails. You know, I just realized, I mean, the United States has only been around for about 200 years, so that's kind of interesting that, that those went on that long. I don't know. It's a long time. Such figures are often cited by the media or online, and these are likely their sources presented from lowest to highest. So this guy, John Scherzer Hittel, estimates 1 million total dead for the Crusades to the east, covering the period from 1095 to 1291. Someone else, Frederick Wortham, says 1 million. This guy says 2 million. 2 million dead Europeans for the Crusades to the east, covering... Okay, so we're just talking about Europeans, not like total. Matthew White estimates 3 million total dead for the Crusades to the east, covering the period from 1095 to 1291. Fielding Hudson Garrison estimates 3 million. Oh, this guy, Henry William Elson, estimates 5 million total dead for the Crusades. Total dead? Are you still just talking about Europeans? This guy estimates 9 million. Okay, so we don't know, but it was a lot. Oh, so this is... I don't like this guy, Horowitz. Is that his name? Is this his website? It's like David Horowitz affiliated, but I was trying to find like defense of the Crusaders, since it's like so much is shit talking. So that's how I found this. But when Christendom learned to fight fire with fire, an incisive review of Raymond Ibrahim's must-read book, Defenders of the West. So I don't know. He's affiliated with the David Horowitz Foundation, I guess, but I probably wouldn't really. It's called Defenders of the West, the Christian heroes who stood against Islam. Chronicles the lives of 8 great crusaders who defended Christians against Islamic extermination, savagery, occupation, and slavery. These heroes demonstrated great courage on the battlefield and a fierce devotion to their Christian faith. Yeah, this written by Ibrahim. What's his name? Raymond Ibrahim. He's a Shillman Fellow. That's what it's called. A Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Okay. And the author of several books about Islam. Born and raised in the U.S. by Coptic Egyptian parents, he is an expert in Islamic history and doctrine. Okay, what's the book about? sets the record straight about the Crusades. Widely maligned by certain interest groups and lobbies as being inspired by greed, xenophobia, racism, colonialism, and a penchant for violence, humiliation, and conquest. That false assertion actually describes the mission of the jihadists. Okay, well, you seem like you don't like Muslims, maybe, I don't know. I don't really want to like talk shit on Muslims either, you know? I'm just like, but I do think that it was justified to a certain degree. It just didn't have the greatest results. I don't know. I don't know. Shows how jihadist behavior has existed on a historic continuum beginning in ancient times. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's not very interesting. Okay, whatever. So that's a book defending the Crusades, I guess. There's the Pope's speeches that he did. I don't know. I think I'm done. Baldwin I of Jerusalem. All right, Heidi, time to stop. Muhammad al-Idrisi's map of the world with Jerusalem at its center, drawn for Roger II of Sicily in 1154. That's kind of funny. I mean, it's interesting. There's that building, Dome of the Rock, reconsecrated as an Islamic shrine when Jerusalem was retaken by Saladin in 1187. Saladin really wasn't the worst person ever. I guess he was mostly fighting other Muslims for the longest time. And he realized when he got really sick and almost died that that's when he was like, jihad! And he was like, he had only been fighting against like the Latin Christians, as they were called, for like only like 11% of his fighting behavior had been against them. And so it was after he recovered from this illness that almost killed him that he was like, all right, time to get serious and take back Jerusalem. So news of the calamitous fall of Jerusalem sparked grief and outrage in the West. Pope Urban III was said to have died of a heart attack at the news. And his successor, Gregory VIII, issued an emotive crusade appeal, and the rulers of Europe began to organize their forces. Anyway, oh, that's a portrait of Saladin. That's funny. Looks like a kid drew it. All right. And I guess the Muslims wrote poetry and stuff during this time. Capture of Constantinople. That was not good. I don't approve of that. Bad form. St. Louis embarking for the Crusades. There's some interesting art to do with it. Okay, X out. I don't know. This guy was a guy. Al-Hakim. All right, let's X out. Let's just X out of everything. We're done. Women participated actively in the Crusades, with a few on the front lines. Arab historian Ahmad al-Din noted, among the Franks, there were indeed women who rode into battle dressed in men's clothes, who rode out into the thick of the fray. Oh, I didn't even get into this at all. The European pagans, such as the Slavs. Yeah, they went after the Slavs in like the Baltic area. I'm trying to remember. Or heretics. Not cool. I don't like that. The council that launched the First Crusade also renewed the Truce of God, which limited military bloodshed. Under the Truce of God, knights were forbidden to feud from Wednesday evening to Monday morning, and on holy days. The Crusades were likewise seen as a way to bring peace because they redirected knights' aggression away from Europe. Talks about cannibalism. The Taffers, a group of wild peasants on the fringe of the First Crusade, would sometimes lead the charge into battle armed only with sticks. Reportedly, they sometimes cooked and ate dead Muslims in a sacred cannibalism. That's disgusting. During the Fourth Crusade, Christians attacked other Christians. The Crusaders intended to fight Muslims in Egypt, but got sidetracked and destroyed the great Eastern Christian capital of Constantinople. So stupid! Muslims conquered far larger territories of Christians than vice versa. As late as 1683, Muslim forces had pushed into Central Europe. Several crusades were led by children or peasants. I don't know about several. These groups believed God would use them, the poor and humble, to free Jerusalem, but none made it to the Holy Land. Crusades were outrageously expensive. King Louis IX spent more than 6 times his annual income to finance one crusade. Yeah, that reminds me of something else. No, just kidding. Peace-loving Francis of whatever. Yeah, I wish they would stop giving money to Ukraine. It's pissing me off. Crusading fervor broke out into savage persecution of Jews during the 11th and 12th centuries. Some bishops tried to stop them. Christians in the First Crusade slaughtered entire villages of Jews along the Rhine River. That's not the First Crusade, that's the People's Crusade, which is a prelude to the First Crusade. In Spain and Portugal, crusade-like wars against the Muslims continued for nearly 800 years. The perpetual crusade, known as the Reconquest, did not end until 1492 under Isabella and Ferdinand. Maybe I should do an episode on the Inquisition. What do you think? The Spanish Inquisition? Crusades were waged in almost every country in Europe and the Near East. It says, in military terms, crusades to the Holy Land utterly failed. Only the First Crusade reached its objective by capturing. Well, you know. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I guess, yeah. Basically. I just find it interesting what you can, get people, what gets Christians to fight. That's what I was interested in. Crusader invasions of Egypt. Stop it. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. Fatimid Caliphate. We're done. Saladin. What was his? Saladin was Yusuf ibn Ayub ibn Shadi. Probably saying that totally wrong. He was Kurdish, for what it's worth. And I think he was Sunni. Yeah. Xing out. Battle of Jaffa. I don't know. I could have done just like one episode about like any of these, I guess, because there's just so much. The end. Oh, and then eventually, the Ottoman Empire became a thing. The rise of the Ottoman Empire after the fall of the Byzantine Empire. I could do an episode about that, maybe. Ottoman Empire. Okay. I'm sorry. I will stop. I will not stop. Okay. I'm stopping now. Thank you. The end. Merry Christmas. Hope you have a good one. That was the Crusades. I appreciate you. Thank you. And good night.